Most of us value creativity even if we do so for different reasons. Maybe you're an entrepreneur trying to hit on your next big idea, or maybe you're somebody with a creative side hobby. Even while many of us are looking for our inner artist, only some think to ask themselves, what's the actual value of creativity in the marketplace? A question that isn't always easy to answer. Anyone who cares about being creative should probably be concerned with the value of their creativity. To put it differently, does art exist for art's sake? Or should our work always be meant for an audience? Is the goal to produce something that fits some sort of need or fulfills an outcome? Does beauty or need actually reduce an artwork's quality? And where does marketing fit into all of this? These may be tricky questions, but they aren't unanswerable. The creative impulse fundamentally involves connecting with other people, even if we don't recognize it. The better we can understand why, the better work we'll do and the more difference our work can make in others' lives. For years, I've been studying the lives of successful authors, artists, and creative people. What I've realized since diving into the world of entrepreneurship myself is that there are certain strengths creative people have that entrepreneurs need. Here are three of them. To create is to connect. The idea of art for art's sake was a creed of the 20th century bohemians. On the surface, it sounds like a good idea. We shouldn't create art that is functional or commercial, the argument goes, but rather pursue the creative act as an end in itself. But what writer, designer, or musician wants their work to be ignored? What entrepreneur wants this? Even if you don't see yourself as a business person at all, chances are you'd like to make a difference in this life or the life of someone else. And the truth is that creation is the sure way to make that type of person-to-person connection. The cartoonist Hugh MacLeod once illustrated what he saw as the difference between information and knowledge. The pattern here is the same, but it takes connections to make it meaningful. We all long for that feeling when our work has resonated with others, and that's what good creative work does. Any idiot can make a point, but the truly creative person makes a connection, and that connection leads to bigger and better ideas. Collaboration, how creative communities take shape. These connections invariably lead to collaboration with other like-minded people. And this is something we don't talk about nearly enough. The idea of the lone artist slogging away at their craft in total isolation is a myth. It always has been. Even reclusive artists like Emily Dickinson communicated regularly with at least one other person. Most creative work happens as a result of collaboration. Most of history's key scientific, artistic, and entrepreneurial breakthroughs can be credited to small groups that spurred each other on in their work. I call these creative circles. Many creative circles are formed as an act of rebellion against the current status quo. In the 1850s, the French Impressionists banded together in solidarity against the narrow-minded bureaucracy of the Parisian salons. Creative circles often start small and then gain an influence over time. A spirit of rebellion brought together a group of unusual painters who would forever change the way we look at art. In the 1920s, Ernest Hemingway joined the likes of Ezra Pound, James Joyce, and Gertrude Stein, forming an avant-garde movement that would eventually be called modernism. 10 years later, a couple of professors named C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien began meeting weekly in Oxford to discuss literature with a handful of friends and ultimately change literature. In their own small act of defiance against the growth of influence of traditions, they made a difference. Creative work is always testing the boundaries of what's come before, and rebellion is an important part of that process. Not only does creativity lead inherently to connection and collaboration, it also involves competition. As they're driven away from the prevalent norms, creative people are often forced together. And this is how markets get disrupted and world-shaking innovations happen. Not in isolation, but in solidarity, but to compete against the status quo. Empathy. Finding an audience for your art takes understanding. The artist has a duty to find an adequate expression and then to convey it to as many minds and eyes as possible. To put it in the more succinctly way, art needs an audience. A good artist serves their audience. A bad artist exploits it. Living in Atlanta, which is fast becoming both a more creative and more entrepreneurial city, I often hear other creatives scorning the pressure to market their work. They want to avoid appearing sleazy or self-promotional. But marketing and creativity are not enemies. They go hand in hand. This can get tricky though. There certainly is a line between a healthy promotion and invasive spammy marketing. People tend to evaluate their experiences of a product or service based on what's expected, so creators first need to understand how they're serving others' needs. But we can't stop there. Innovation begins with identifying people's expectations and ends with exceeding them. Steve Jobs famously quipped that people don't know what they want until you show it to them. That's the voice of a creative talking. Creative people have a sensitivity for what people need even before they realize it. And this isn't pandering, it's empathizing. A good artist serves their audience because they are concerned about how their work will be received. A bad artist is simply too lazy or greedy to worry much about that and instead exploits whatever attention they can get. In other words, it pays to be sensitive. The best time to be creative. With access to tools and technology we've never had before, now is truly the best time to be creative. It's also the best time for companies and organizations to take full advantage of creativity, as long as we never lose sight of these three principles in the process. Synthesis. Good creative work is about making connections, not just making points. Collaboration. Without the involvement of others, your work will likely suffer and probably won't spread very far. Empathy. Marketing is about building communities, and all artistic output does demand an audience. But it takes the right person to serve that audience well. And to do that, you need to take the time to understand your work and your audience. The opportunity to do creative work that makes an impact, pays the bills, and gets noticed is unprecedented in our world today, as long as we're willing to challenge preconceived notions about what it means to be creative. Creativity is not a frill. It's essential to the well-being of any society, any serious business, and anyone wanting to create a better future for themselves, their business, and their energies. So today, I will leave you with this question. Are you creating meaning and connecting others to that meaning through your creative work? Or will you just decorate something and watch it fade away once the attraction ends? Have a great day and create the magic your mind has manifested. J3.